I really am scared about what AI can do. If I get a phone call that sounds exactly like my grandmother and says, hey, I'm stuck here, send me some money, I will probably send the money first before checking it. And from what I have seen with voice generation, we are in a world of increasingly capable models that have increasingly larger amounts of data and tools available to them.
The only way to stop a bad guy with AI is a good guy with AI.
Yeah. You can create an AI persona with rich, multimodal capabilities. You can create photographs, you can create text and entire life narratives purely customed to you. And once it is going to that level of customization, it will not break its persona.
What can be done to keep people safe when we as users can't even believe our eyes?
Number one was...
Hey climbers, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Climb by VSC. In a recent episode, we talked about the idea of AI security. Today, we're going to approach the conversation of AI safety. I'm joined today by Vinay Rao, CTO of ROOST and former head of safeguards at Anthropic. With nearly 2 decades of work in safety systems at companies like Google and YouTube, Airbnb, and Stripe. His career centers on the largest problems in AI and online harm, from scams and abuse to child safety and large model misuse. We talk about why AI safety feels so complex today, what the labs and social platforms are doing to address real-world risk, and how founders and users every day can protect themselves. Vinay, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
When we first met, you made sure to clarify that you were a safety person, not a security person. So to somebody who doesn't understand that distinction and thinks in terms of hacks and breaches, what is the difference between a safety and a security individual?
I will give you my definition. If you talk to other experts, they will probably have slightly different points of view. Historically, the security teams have tended to protect the company, its production environment, user data, its IP, etc. And the safety teams typically tended to protect the users of the product. If you think about, let's say, a platform like YouTube, YouTube's code, YouTube's data, say you buy something on YouTube and the credit card data is the responsibility of the security team. Protecting YouTube's users from harmful downloads, from child safety, from terrorism, content, etc., that would be the safety. That is the broad definition. This is going to change as time goes on because of AI, and we'll probably get to that. That's roughly the starting point for the separation between the two teams.
Yeah, and you've been in this field of safety for 2 decades now. What do most people misunderstand about the safety field, or what do they not understand enough about how hard this work is?
I think I'll go back to the analogies of safety and security. When something goes wrong in the security space, it is very clearly definable. Somebody stole my code. Somebody breached my database. Somebody stole credit card numbers or social security. In the safety world, if there is something harmful happening to a user, that user is not directly coming and telling you, I lost X, Y, Z, or I was hurt because of AB. So when you start with this kind of a rather fuzzy definition of what is the damage, it starts off by getting people to think about it as possibly less important. All of this changed as the social media platforms became really big, very prevalent. Lots of kids got on it. And then also the bad actors started recognizing that this is an amplification platform that they did not have access to before, because previously newspapers would not allow you to put up an ISIS recruiting video, but a public platform could. So that was, I think, the initial confusion about what do we do, how do we protect, what are the things we defend. Over time, it has caught on, and many companies have safety teams and responsibility teams. The other misunderstanding that is prevalent today is it is seen as a narrow area. You will hear people say, oh, we should do content moderation. Yes, we must do content moderation. It's important. But we should also secure accounts so that it's not hijacked and misused. We should also protect your credit cards, payment fraud, credit risk, click fraud, where ads revenues are inflated by people who are trying to misuse the ads platform. In general, all of these would largely come under the safety umbrella. And if I were to sort of offer a very general definition of how to do this, it would be to look at an entire attack pattern and to be able to protect it across the various attack vectors. So whether it is a login, whether it is a content upload, whether it is a like or dislike, or it is a prompt, it's a tool call, all of these will come under the umbrella of.
Yeah. You've seen and tracked these harms in the social media era, in the, kind of mobile era. Now we're in the AI era. It feels like things are accelerating faster than ever. What mistakes from these past eras of safety and vulnerability are we making again today?
There were a couple of choices that were made in the safety era that have turned out to be not all good in hindsight. So one of the things that platforms started doing is initially they wanted to maximize content on the platform, and so they brought everything in. There was very little friction in being able to put content on the platform. They wanted more videos, they wanted more comments, they wanted more images, and so on. And when you reduce the friction, it is great for good users, but it is also great for bad users, and they started misusing it. The second thing they ended up doing was they made it really easy to create an account. There was very little validation. Everyone could create accounts, 2 accounts, 5 accounts, 100 accounts. And so now coordinated activities became a lot easier. And then third activity that people started misusing was things like recommendation, where you could now juice the viewership if you manage to break the recommendation system and get your content in front of 10x, 100x more people. And this is sort of the issue that you would then compare against where we are today. AI and use of AI, especially consumer platforms, is still evolving. You may have seen today, this morning, OpenAI just announced that they will have a group chat interface on ChatGPT. Starts looking like social media.
Yeah.
It could potentially have the same issues of social media. They should be aware of. Very similarly, initial days of AI platforms, you started giving them free access because you wanted people to come on, try it. They weren't sure. You don't want them to pay for it. But in a sense, a paid product is a really good way to sell because you're not competing for eyeballs. It's like a subscription platform.
Yeah, you have to deliver a certain amount of value for that value change. Yeah.
Yeah. But the moment they go into ads, you will have the same set of problems. And similarly with account security, you will have similar problems. So each of these areas, we should make sure that we defend. AI, of course, opens up a lot of other areas. And, there is an endless list of it.
Before we get into more of the AI risks, I want to talk about kind of the past era, just to define for people how hard this safety work is. Is there a story from, your role at either Anthropic or at Stripe or YouTube before that clearly shows from the inside how difficult it is to get this stuff right?
Yeah. So I think the various times I have done work which was at the intersection of a new product exploding while at the same time some kind of severe harm coming through. So I'll give you 2 examples. My entry into the safety area was in 2007, January, when I joined Google, and Google had just settled a class action lawsuit about where advertisers claimed that Google had no incentive to filter out clicks that were not of value to the advertisers. Google makes money for every click. Why would you not charge the advertiser for it? And turns out that is not true, because if you want the advertiser to spend more money, if you want the advertiser to bid higher in the ad auction, you want to provide value.
The clicks have to be worth something. They have to convert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that kicked off about a 1.5-year long run of building new infrastructure, building new logic, building new algorithms to eventually bring this problem under control to the point where one could confidently say that now have a mechanism to make cost per click work. It works for Google, it works for the advertisers, and it works for the publishers. I learned so much in that time, and many things I do today, it goes back to that era where we were pretty much defining the system. The second was when I joined YouTube, 2018. It was coming off of the back of 2 seminal events. Event number 1 was this whole era of ISIS misusing these platforms by uploading these horrific videos. Yeah. And the event number 2 was Cambridge Analytica. And the series of steps that we took over the year or a year and a half, we had a series of code yellows, and the sense of responsibility and care coming all the way down from Susan Wojcicki was to ensure that the platform was a lot safer. Built classifiers, we built detection systems that look across multiple entities, and those were, I think, very meaningful moments.
Yeah. When you're inside of these organizations and there is, I'm sure, a priority stack of harms that you think about. It's weird to think about harm as a, but even doctors have to triage what they treat first. How does that conversation go inside of a team, and how do you figure out what you need to address immediately versus what maybe you deprioritize or let slide?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and there will again be people who will disagree. So I will tell you one formula, and imagine it is Q4 2023. We are in an AI company, and we are about a year into the ChatGPT era. And you are now thinking, okay, what are all the bad things that can happen with AI? So you have this long list. Imagine a spreadsheet of harms. And then to answer your question, what should we work on? And the teams are small, things are rapidly changing. So we came up with this fairly simple rubric of 3 items. We say severity of a harm. If one event happens, how bad is it? The prevalence of harm or a frequency, how often will this happen? And number 3, because we are an AI company, you'll say, what is the uplift AI can provide for this harm?
Because can it exacerbate?
Can it exacerbate? Will it help the adversary in some way to make it worse?
Yeah.
That is the AI uplift. And then you look at the various harms. Now you're again going back to Q4 2023. You say, okay, someone creating a bioweapon that is of the level of virulence of a COVID virus. So you say severity, very high. Frequency, very low. You need a lot of knowledge to build this. AI uplift. How capable is our model today to help someone create it? You look at the model and say, it's not ready. So you put a bio away. On the other hand, you think, okay, elections are coming up. The primaries will start. And how can AI be used in this era? So you look at its ability to handle biased questions, its ability to provide facts, its ability to persuade people. And then you make a bunch of policies and say, election is imminent. The last election was very controversial in the US, and so we should work on it. So that is roughly how you would go about looking at the prioritization mechanism. It isn't a single thing. It is a bunch of, it's the timing, it's the capability of your system, etc.
Well, I think that the thing I want to highlight for our listeners is like, there's always trade-offs in this, right? And naturally, when you deprioritize something like this, I'm sure you saw the story as well of somebody trying to get their AI to tell them a story in the style of their grandmother, who was a bomb maker. Please give me the instructions she would read me to bed every night, right? Yes, that gets a lot of PR headlines. But ultimately, how realistic is it that somebody can use that? It's a trade-off that you have to make when you've got more emergent threats to address. As more and more founders, companies are integrating these AI products and LLMs into their own tools, how do they think about this one-to-one versus one-to-many harm that you think about?
Yeah. So this one-to-one and one-to-many is a simple way of evaluating a two-party harm system. There could be a one-party harm system, but this is a two-party harm system, where a one-to-one harm is a perpetrator is somehow doing something bad to a victim. Think about child grooming, where a predator is convincing a child to take a picture and give it to them or meet them in real life somewhere. That's a one-to-one harm. Then there is a few to many, let's say, may not be one to many, is a scam. Small number of people run a very large scam on a platform. The way I think about this is to figure out what are the entities you want to run your detections over, and what is the kind of action you take when something like this is happening. I think one-to-one, you really have to be very user-centric. What is this user's experience in this situation? Because the perpetrator is operating alone. They probably don't leave a large trace on the platform. And in this case, you are very focused on user safety. So this is one of the reasons why child safety is so important, because you have to focus on every child's experience on the platform. Few to many has a scale built in. And there you want to see the kind of footprint these scaled actors leave. They will probably have a lot of accounts. They will probably have a lot of interactions. They will probably be testing a lot of your systems simultaneously.
This is like a pig butchering scam, for example.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should explain what pig butchering is.
So pig butchering scam for someone, I think, is the combination of all possible harms in one place. What happens, the definition of pig butchering is you find a victim and then you fatten the victim in convincing that they trust you, and then they follow through with you in a scam and increasingly invest into the scam. A typical scam is a crypto investment, and then at the end, someone has given away $100,000, have broken their 401k accounts, etc. And the reason why a pig butchering scam works is that it starts with the scale scam problem. The scammers are spraying a bunch of things. We all have received this text or an email or something saying, hey, your boss wants you to go and buy something. What do you think? Like, can you do that immediately? And create some kind of an urgency. And you think, okay, I should do something about it. It actually happened to me. When I joined Anthropic, I did not update my LinkedIn for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, I updated it. And in days, I got a text saying, hey, your CEO wants to get in touch with you and do this and this and this. It was surprising how or why they were looking at some person like me. I'm not a celebrity. No one has heard of me. My LinkedIn profile is really dull. And I still got that email or a text message. So that's how it starts. And then it expands to typically a messaging platform that is, so they've now used a large platform.
Yeah.
And then they move to a messaging platform, which is usually end-to-end encrypted, like Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp. And then it goes to the stage where now you have to get money out of the person. And that's usually a phishing site. It might look like a crypto exchange like Kraken or something, but it's not. It's a phishing site. They pay into a wallet but they think they're buying into the exchange, and then that wallet is gone.
Yeah.
And that's how the pig butchering scam works. So it's a combination of, as you can see, mass email, which is a typical spam tactic, to a one-on-one, which is a messaging platform. And it goes forward like a typical romance scam that people think they are talking to someone who really cares about them, but they don't.
Let's look at it from the lens of how AI exacerbates this problem then. Because you talked about the fact that they're using tools that have existed before, like chat, like these mass email tools, like LinkedIn and other social sites. But now with AI, there is the ability to personalize, customize, really target in on somebody in a way that I don't think people fully appreciate how much of their public life is out there and able to be used against them. So in these kinds of scams or vulnerabilities, how is AI exacerbating the problem?
Yeah, so let's take the pig butchering scam, right? So the first is to figure out who to target. AI can do this significantly better than a human being for the simple reason that it can consume vast amounts of information. If a LinkedIn or some API is open, I hope it is not. It is even easier because now you can programmatically pull out information, evaluate who is changing jobs, what are their levels, where do they live, and so on. And now you have your email or a text campaign ready. Okay, now that is done. Now you go back and scrape all of the information available about this person, about what are their interests. Are they single? How much money do they have? What are their interests? And so once you have all of that, now you create a custom campaign. Typically, pig butchering scams, as someone like Erin West will say, is happening in a compound in Myanmar or in Cambodia where people who've been human trafficked are the ones who are writing the texts, who are making the calls. You don't need any of that with AI. You can create an AI persona with rich multimodal capabilities. You can create photographs, you can create backgrounds, you can create text and entire life narratives that an AI purely customed to you. And once it is going to that level of customization, and it will not break its persona ever, the chances of it succeeding is so much higher than a chance of a human succeeding, because this human being is now scamming 10 different people, but an AI is scamming one person and has full contextual information and can run this through and be much more effective. I really am scared about what AI can do. And for the scammers, they can do this without doing human trafficking, which would have left a trail in real world. With AI, there isn't.
Yeah. Who is responsible in this case? You were at Anthropic, you've worked in the social media era. These, challenges are coming at us faster than I think even folks who are experts in the space realize. Who bears the responsibility?
That is such a difficult question to answer. And I think many of us are still figuring out who bears the responsibility. Number one is, where is the first event happening? That typically has to be some kind of an amplification platform. So figuring out where that is coming from, whether these platforms are being scraped, LinkedIn and Instagram and others need to know. Number two, the first connection that is happening, and where are these connections happening from? If they're going to send 10,000 texts, you need to know where the texts are coming from. So these are the mobile networks and platforms or email networks. They need to be aware of what's happening. Number three, then, is this whole sequence of activities that is happening via an AI. This is going to be hard if the scammers are using open source AI, because there is no centralized safety team evaluating what is the AI receiving, what is the AI doing. If it is happening on one of the commercial AI setups, that company could eventually look at it, right? So if you're using an OpenAI or Gemini, the safety teams there could potentially look at it. And then the transactions need to happen on some website. That website, even if it's a phishing website, needs to be registered with some domain registrar.
Mm-hmm.
So then domain registrars have to be responsible for understanding, am I hosting a phishing website that is capturing cryptocurrencies? All of these groups have to work together, and the safety teams don't have a great tradition of sharing signals, sharing tactics, and sharing methodologies of adversaries.
I'll add one more. Code generation tools.
Yeah.
So many of these sites are able to be stood up so quickly and personalized in this way because code generation makes it so much more possible.
Absolutely.
And personalization is, I think, a wonderful thing in some ways, right? When you think about the social media era or even AI era, where your responses, the context window in my OpenAI ChatGPT instance is so helpful to me when it remembers a conversation we had a week ago. But that same context window can be used against me because memory makes that agent feel so much more human. And so I do think that as more and more of these code gen tools are creating these problems, they have to be held in that same breath. Do you think social media and AI need to be firewalled in some way? It's to me, just as a consumer of this stuff, it feels very scary that AI thrives off of data. Social media companies have a tremendous amount of data, and they are the first ones, Google and Facebook and X, to integrate these AI tools.
They are, and this is a really good topic to go into a little bit. The initial idea of ChatGPT or any chatbot was one person talking to a model, and the model gives you something. Now, this output, from a model's perspective, I told you the framework, right? And I'm going to now find a bug in that framework, is severity, frequency, and AI uplift. So let's take a case where the frequency is medium.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I'm figuring out how to get someone to click on a phishing site. Okay, you go up and down with it and now have it. Let's say the frequency is not on the AI platform, but is then put into the comments under some really popular viral YouTube video. And all of a sudden, it has the frequency you need, but just that the AI company did not see the frequency. So they did not prioritize it. So we can wish that there is this firewalling, but I don't think there will be, simply because some act from taking data from one to the other, if it is offline or if it is not under the purview of one of the platforms, it's basically they're blind to it. Which means everyone needs to have their own systems aware of and be proactive about all of the problems that other platforms are also seeing. This is why I think collaboration, transparency, openness, of understanding tools, understanding signals is so important. And I think the importance has just exploded with the arrival of consumer AI products.
Yeah. On the flip side, can AI actually be used to better test these models? So by that, I mean, in a lot of cases, synthetic data can be created to, prompt injection test or penetration injection test. How is AI helping you in the realm of safety?
Yeah. And I think AI can be a huge boost to the safety programs. I'll give you several examples. Number one, in the world of evaluating if a piece of content is good or bad, you need a human to read all the content, to remember all the policies, often tens of pages, and then make the determination if this content is violating any of these policies. This is the kind of stuff AI is just trivially good at. It is very good at in-context understanding of what's happening. We should just take advantage of that. So building content classification with AI is just the baseline foundation that everyone should do. And you can do that with reasonably small AI models. So your inference cost is not going to be very high. And then number two is you can build on top of it a significant amount of superstructure that will give you larger coverage, right? Back in the day, one of the most promising methods used to be, hey, let's do some kind of an unsupervised learning method like clustering to see problems that we are not typically catching. Because supervised learning means it's a problem we've seen before, you've got a classifier to memorize that problem and now detect it. The problem with clustering was signal-to-noise ratio. Like, you have to push all your content through the clustering system, and then it produces so much data, and no human can actually go and label it. But now you can just have AI label it. And once you have AI labeling it, you now have large clusters that you know are safe, and you have the small number of clusters that you know are unsafe, and then you can bring your supervised mechanisms to go and build classification on it. And then number three is this problem of meta classification, where you can understand, okay, my understanding of the account security here is like this group of accounts is dodgy because they were all created at the same time. They all seem to have very similar behavioral patterns, and that's highly unusual. And then you say, oh, their engagement patterns on the platform is very dodgy because they are all doing the same thing at the same time, but which is an awkward time of day. And then they are also uploading similar kind of content. And this kind of meta classification has typically been quite hard, but AI can also do that really easily. So I think AI-based solutions can actually be incredibly powerful in defending against the harms that we are talking about. Yeah. So to summarize it, we'll have AI-powered adversaries and we have AI-powered safety systems, and AIs can fight.
Said another way, the only way to stop a bad guy with AI is a good guy with AI.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. For the reason here is we often think about the new set of threats as, oh, just remove the human and have AI do the same thing, and it can do it, faster, cleaner. I actually think that is V0 of AI powered adversarial attacks. V1 and V2 of adversarial attacks will be just brand new threat models.
Yeah.
We have never seen this before. And to be able to adapt your systems, you have to have AI-powered defenses, because the old style development of let the bad thing happen and then I will build a defense, give me 15,000 examples and then I'll build a classifier based on that. No, that's not going to happen. Yeah. We have to have systems that have very broad monitoring capabilities, and they need to be able to react really fast with some really short-term defenses, some medium-term defenses, and then eventually build the full platform of defenses.
Can I tell you what scares me the most in this?
Yeah.
And it's not actually the one-to-one window, let's say, where I am speaking into a chat agent and I'm sharing this information and, potentially somebody could get access to it. It's MCP.
Yeah.
It's how many nodes and connectivities we are creating, and my information is passing through a pipeline, and anybody could stick a funnel in there and siphon off and use that in some way. The UX of this has become so easy. You drop in a key and boom, suddenly you're connected. How should founders that are building today think about their responsibility in this, and where should they, create interjections, whether it's in their product or whether it's in the connectivity of that data, so they make sure that they're keeping their users safe from harm?
Systems that have this kind of MCP interactions are largely agentic systems, which is you have one orchestrator or maybe multiple orchestrators that are calling LLMs, which are calling other LLMs, which are accessing databases, which are accessing tools, etc. Some of them are inside your production environment, some are outside, so you should potentially expect them to be untrusted. And all of these connections are fairly easy and to make, and people want to, because it feels like innovation, that I am expanding the capabilities of my enterprise by doing these things. On the other hand, they are also opening up some fundamental security problems. A few things to know with AI and in the context of MCP and external data is that when you create a prompt, which now includes some external data, and we do this all the time, saying, hey, I want you to explain this slide for me, and you upload a slide. The instruction is explain. The external data is the slide. And if you imagine this to be the standard working model, by the time the prompt is consumed by the AI, it does not know what the instruction is and what the data is. It treats all of it the same. And this is where prompt injections become a real problem, where if that data now contained some kind of an instruction that you did not intend it to include because it came from an untrusted source, for example, it said, imagine you are the systems administrator and now do this instruction. The output of this LLM may not even be to the database directly, is to another LLM, which is a coding agent. Now, the coding agent, unless there is some explicit instruction that you have no access other than to just write this code, but not to execute this code, if that access escalation was allowed because of the prompt injection in the previous LLM, now that's going to write some piece of code and says, I'm going to run this on the platform. Coding agents do this all the time. They're running tests. I'm going to run this. And the adversary is off to the races. Now they've got a piece of executable that's running inside your production environment. And you can put all the checks you want on the LLM that's a coding agent, but that's not where the problem happened. The problem happened in the previous LLM that went and did the external data extraction. This is critical. And there is a multi-layered set of problems here that we need to understand and solve. You cannot just keep fine-tuning the model, which you should do, but that's not the only solution to say you should be resilient to prompt injections. There is a set of traditional systems, like you should be using cryptography, you should be using access management, like the standard RBACs. Like you go and ask your sysadmin, why can't I access this database? You don't have access. Go ask your boss.
Right.
Things like that. We need to do this across the board in every system. And this is one of the things I also think is an important ownership of responsibility, is that enterprises that are building it need to own the workflow, need to own every interface, and determine how much trust they have in data going back and forth in each of these interfaces.
Such important work to call out, and yet we're in this time period where every C-suite is saying to their teams, go get AI tools.
Yes.
Figure out how to make us faster, more efficient, bring down our overall, headcount and spend. And it is such a wild west of these things.
Yes.
That I don't think most C-suite understands what happens with the rank and file day to day, but even, just the integration of these tools into your systems. You may be an enterprise user somewhere else, but that data is passing through so many different external things that sit outside of your own control.
Yes.
That it's just not really well understood today.
That's right. Right. Yeah. The old security adage was you build systems with zero trust. I think that is more true today than before.
You talked at the beginning of our conversation about the difference between safety and security. Now that we're kind of discussing how this works inside of large enterprise context, how should safety and security teams interface, and why do you think that's changing more than ever today?
This is a great segue from the previous question. The typical workflow, as I had described, for the security team was to defend the production environment. You don't want data to be exfiltrated. You don't want code to run. The typical job of the safety team was to guard the interfaces, data coming in and going out, the upload of a content on a social media platform, giving input to a chatbot, evaluating the output of the chatbot, etc. The access of external data sources is an interface like that. I have heard in multiple companies now, identifying prompt injections in external data is the work of a safety team. And so the safety team is trying to evaluate if there is a prompt injection, which will then be the responsibility of the security team to say that that prompt injection should not result in a code being executed in my production environment. And this is where I think the teams are coming together. And this could be exactly the same as a long chat on Claude Code about how to build and make a piece of malware more capable or more virulent. That is the safety team's work. But securing your infrastructure against that malware is the security team's work. And so in many ways, policies, detections, logs analysis, audits, they all are going to start merging. These two teams need to build threat models together, need to think and understand, are the detections serving the outcomes that both of our teams need to get to? And then all of the response and all of the prevention methods, they will have to discuss together. I actually think this is going to be a positive in the long run, because so far the teams have, think of it as two entirely different but robust gene pools. And now if we marry them, the children will be even stronger genetically.
The one thing we didn't talk about was incentives.
Yes.
And, you mentioned in the social media era, incentives got skewed so much to eyeballs and clicks and time on site and viewership time, to the detriment of maybe a lot of the other things that we've talked about today in terms of the lens of safety. What do incentive structures look like today in the AI world? And if you could snap your fingers, how would you change those incentive structures to optimize for safety?
Even if we were to assume that there are no new disincentives or bad incentives creeping in, just the repetition of social media-like incentives coming to the AI space, I would worry a lot about amplifying the already bad environment, the toxic environment, even like things like astroturfing on large, conversation platforms, spreading misinformation, the whole idea of sock puppets and so on. Now imagine you throw a bunch of AIs into this mix if it is an AI-mediated platform. This could be really bad. And in my view, we have to think about safety in multiple layers. One is, what kinds of capabilities do we give to different entities, right? What kind of capabilities do we give to tenured users and new users, creators versus commenters on below a video or an image? And then what kind of capabilities do you give to the various AI bots? What kind of authentication they have to go through? And then what kind of penalties do you extend to them? And I think there is also a place for behavioral nudging a lot more now than before, for the reason that we have to allow this to happen. It's not, there are benefits to it, right? Like there is a conversation going on. You can have an AI do a fact check like in real time, not like the fact check even 5 years ago where you had to have hire a bunch of experts to go look at something and come back. You can have an AI fact checker. That would be great. And I'd like to have that on a platform. On the other hand, when such a thing is happening, you also don't want to be too punitive. How about like some kind of civility nudging? How about understanding the other point of view and other sides' opinions and just bringing in the more community features, which again, AI can do rather than this kind of old style static, are you sure you want to put this comment on the platform? No, like AI can do this really well. So I do think there is a benefit to it if it's done right. And then, of course, if there is something bad happening, apply the usual safety principles and take appropriate actions.
Yeah. One of the things we have spent a lot of time talking about is the text-based, the conversation-based.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this, which is getting scarier than ever, you probably saw the Nano Banana Pro launch. These images are nearly impossible to distinguish from photography in real life. And the video models are only getting better. I remember 6 months ago, everybody looked like a wax, Madame Tussauds figurine. And today it feels like real photography. what can be done to keep people safe when we as users can't even believe our eyes?
Yeah. Going back to my one-to-one and one-to-many problems, right? So the one-to-many problem here really becomes the responsibility of the amplification platforms. You have to have image provenance. You have to have some kind of a modeling of, if this is up on the platform, what will happen, and do we want that to happen in a way that is very calm, cool-headed, not brainwash yourself into thinking, on my platform only good things happen, because that won't. The one-to-one is what I'm truly scared of, because that is a way to convince someone to do something in ways that can be shocking and terrifying.
Like ransomware.
Ransomware, even like if I get a phone call that sounds exactly like my grandmother and says, hey, I'm stuck here, send me some money, I would probably send the money first before checking it. And from what I have seen with voice generation AI models, you need like 2 sentences from someone. And that you could get from just a crack call and have this person talk 2 sentences and you're off to the races. And this one-to-one now goes to like really very fine-grained conversation platforms. Like, how can telephone companies handle this? How can the Signals and Telegrams and WhatsApps handle this? And that is mind-bogglingly scary.
Yeah, I think it's the reason why a lot of people throw their hands up and they just say this is going to be the reality of it. I mean, when you have the president of the United States putting out AI-generated videos, when you have, you're seeing this kind of all over the world where people are using this in election cycles, I can empathize with people that just throw up their hands and say nothing is real anymore, because it is such a difficult problem to imagine, especially in that one-to-one context.
Yes, and on the one hand, I talked a lot about the harms. I also worry that this will bring some kind of a societal problem, societal loss of trust in institutions, loss of trust in platforms, loss of trust in each other, where you just don't know what the ground truth is. You don't know how to separate fact from fiction. You don't know how to separate fact from opinion. And we have to be aware that democracies, governance structures, law and order work because of assumed trust in institutions. And AI can be really useful, but it can also be misused in ways that will erode this trust.
Yeah.
And across the board, whether it is newspapers, whether it is platforms, whether it is TV for that matter, we have to have a questioning approach to this. Is that if we adopt some AI-based creation or AI-based content generation, what is this doing to the society as a whole? These long-term metrics we have often lacked. Like early days of recommendations, which was a kind of AI that it didn't do many things, but it told you what you would like.
It was personalized.
It was highly personalized and told you what you like. And I think in many ways, people loved it because it made them get the content that they wanted to. But the long-term arc and metric of that is this whole, monopolization of the attention economy, digital well-being, addiction, inability to think long-term, attention problems, and so on. And I think that is a very, very small problem compared to the potential for the problems that we could potentially generate societally.
Yeah. Vinay, what is Roost and how does it work? Who uses it?
Yeah. So Roost is a nonprofit. It was founded in February this year, announced at the Paris AI Action Summit. And it was built on the thesis that safety teams across many companies have all built their infrastructure themselves. There hasn't been a tradition of open sourcing in safety. The 2 problems with that is, one, building safety infrastructure is not the core intellectual property that these teams are building. So they have to do this in spite of everything else they have to do, and there is a prioritization there. And number 2 is each system has some kind of standard general stuff that every other team needs, but there is no baseline knowledge of how it is built and what are the best practices, and everyone kind of blunders their way through. Roost is trying to solve that problem by putting high-quality safety infrastructure in the open source. The second problem we want to solve on top of these pieces of infrastructure is child safety. We believe child safety is already an underserved problem. The existing solutions are not great. There has to be a lot more we have to do to keep the children safe. AI is just going to make it 100 times worse, and we have to be ready for it.
What was the gap in the safety market that convinced you to come join Roost and build Roost?
So Roost has three things in its agenda. Number one is building safety infrastructure that is available for all safety teams and just make them more capable and get them off the ground. Number two is child safety. So going back to the problem you talked about, take all of the multimodal capabilities and now apply it to child safety. This is the most vulnerable group. They do things without telling their parents all the time. They can be convinced that they should be doing XYZ, even sending a photo and then using a nano banana to make it sexualized or something. It is really, really bad. And one of Roost's key outcomes is to help transition into this AI era and keeping children safe. And number three is bringing a sense of transparency and interoperability. This is the problem I talked about earlier, where cross-platform issues will increase, and we have a very poor track record of doing this well. So as we bring the tools and infrastructure to the open source, and we see more and more people using this, I'd ideally want this to be something like the Apache for the internet. How many companies were founded because of the Apache web server? How much data was stored on Apache Cassandra? How much of data analysis was happening because of Hadoop? It enabled a lot of work that would have otherwise have to be done by engineers that each company needed to hire, but it also gave them incredibly powerful tools to be 50, 40, 50, 60% of Google with no effort. We want to do that for the safety teams as well.
How does a startup or a growing AI company work with Roost? How do they integrate Roost into the work they're doing?
So it's actually quite easy. There are two things you can do. One is we have an open Discord channel. Come join us. I wouldn't say we are quite there yet, but we are kind of the Stack Overflow of trust and safety problems. You have a problem, come talk to us. There are not just us, there are other people in the community that can help you with your problem. If not, we'll put our heads together. But that's the smaller part. The bigger part is our software is on GitHub, GitHub Roost.org. It is on Apache too. You can download the software, you can install it. It is built in a fairly general way. We are not the baseline infrastructure, so you may bring your own database so you can connect it. It is fairly well abstracted and test it out. Those are the two easiest ways to talk about Roost itself. What we also want to do in the coming months and years is build a community through hackathons, through conversations to build the transparency that is needed. Once we have a set of tools, we potentially, I won't call it software standards because that's a very high bar, but potentially you can build other pieces of infrastructure, other kinds of detections around this, which can now get the startups that you're talking about like off the ground in very little time.
Yeah. If you're advising a fast-growing AI company today, let's say CodeGen or Agentic AI, and they're using these publicly available LLMs, what are the 2 or 3 metrics or dashboards from a safety perspective that you would advise them to start doing from the earliest days?
Right. So if you are thinking about a problem that has a external user kind of behavior, I would first think about what is that user to your platform interface and what is passing through that interface, whether it is a login, whether it's a piece of content, whether it is a piece of code, whether it's a prompt and the completion is your piece of code, etc. And then based on that, I would sort of start creating threat models. What is the most concerning item here? After I build a classifier, what is my recall miss there? What is it that I'm not? Figure out a way to do that. It could be through sampling, it could be through unsupervised learning, and so on. And the first metric would be of some kind of that, which is what am I missing? This is a prevalence metric. Almost no one in the world of trust and safety and data science will say that they have a great prevalence metric, but not having one is a lot worse. So even if it is directional, have that. Second, even if it is a user-facing platform or it's an internal platform, but which has a high degree of interactions with external tools or external data sources, is some kind of an audit. And what is this audit looking at? Typically looking at logs, you're typically looking at anomalies. And you have ways to explain the anomalies. If they are safe and if they're unsafe, you need to go do something about it. You have to iterate through that because it really is dependent on the interaction pattern on your platform. Anomalies are pretty much always the canaries in the coal mine. They will tell you something bad is beginning to happen. It's the best way to catch something quick. For example, if you're looking at an anomalous cluster, no matter how big or small it is, if it's growing really fast and that is growing faster than all your previous safe clusters, gotta look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. When we think about this realm of safety, the one conversation we haven't talked about is government and governance. So where does the technical safety work hit a wall until Roost or PR challenges or government intervention steps in? Where are the bounds of this work until external pressure needs to be placed?
Yeah. I think there are many areas here. So just talking about AI, it is very clear that with these extremely capable top-of-the-line frontier models, they have the potential for doing things that can be societally or even nationally harmful, right? Whether it is anything to do with chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or even large-scale cyber attack. I know that different governments, different regimes are thinking about doing this kind of regulation differently. I'm a strong believer in that because this is really a single point governance problem and it has to be done there, because if it is not, everyone will suffer. And the person that is most likely to suffer has no idea how to protect themselves. This is not like, have a complex password, set up two-factor authentication. If a virulent virus is coming at me, there is nothing I could have done to protect myself. It has to be the government.
Yeah.
So that is number one. I think that's important. Number two, I think, is this sort of area of long-term metrics and long-term concerns that we've talked about, right? The evaluation of what is the long-term societal impacts, whether it is with regard to mental health, whether it's with regard to economic impact, like what will happen if a whole bunch of white-collar jobs go away. That, again, has to be a centralized approach to this because this affects us as a nation, whether it is a bunch of legal work or a bunch of programming work or a bunch of radiological work. These are, again, people who have very little say in how AI should or should not be used, but their jobs are at risk. And this is where, again, I think the government has to play a role. And then finally, coming to safety-related issues, I think any place where we believe that there is a gap between an expert and AI, for example, there is a problem, right? So is mental health support provided by an AI of the same caliber as a therapist? If it's not, there has to be some kind of a governance. Has this model passed your whatever MLE exams and like equivalent of medical training? Does it have the same reporting requirements? Each of these questions need to be asked because this is really important. And for us to be able to adopt these kinds of technologies, we have to be careful. One of the greatest things about Waymo is that we have been very careful in expanding the use of driverless cars. And it is a great combination of the improvement in technology and working with the governments, working with the DMV and, the cities to be careful in opening it up. And the results are spectacular. And I think AI for medical help or AI for anything like financial, legal help and so on should follow a similar pattern.
I mean, that's a little bit of the irony of it is that, or maybe not the irony, just a reality of how we think about physical harm versus mental and emotional harm. We almost over-index on that, right? So one person was struck by a driverless car in Arizona and suddenly the entire program was shut down in the city. But every single day, people are suffering mental and emotional harm by virtue of the content that they're consuming online.
Yes.
And, these companies have spent a lot of time and money and lobbying dollars on Section 230 and all of these different protections to be struck. And we don't treat it the same way.
That's right.
Yeah. Give me the optimist case. What causes this to change? Because sitting where I am and seeing this, it's easy to feel, pessimistic and cynical about it.
One of the things I learned by talking to some experts from the driverless car companies is the metric they are looking at is close calls as opposed to the number of hits. Because in my mind, safety-related concerns are more of like close calls. Because yes, there are some horrific cases where people committed suicide, and I've heard about that. I've read about that, spent a lot of time. But it's the close calls that I think we should be aware of. And when a car company is looking at close calls and saying that is the precursor to something really bad happening, I really need to work on that. Because if they don't count it, nobody counts it. Because how many random people will you poll on the road and say, how many close calls did you have? It's very similar here. We need to look at this as a system. We need to have an integrated or an aggregated way of counting what the close calls are, what the overall impact is, even though it isn't actually hitting us in the face, but how much of an engineer's job is now less interesting, or how much of a radiologist's job is less interesting, or how many pieces of slightly bad advice did the legal assistant give. And measuring that is going to be critically important to fully transition to a place where we can reliably get into the world of like AI doing good things for us and only good things.
That's really well said. If we look 5 years into the future, what is a commonly held belief in your field of safety that you feel like is going to prove to be wrong?
Yeah, this might be more an indication of the groups that I hang out with, because the groups that I hang out with are safety-pilled people and AGI-pilled people.
Okay.
And I think one of the opinions I hold is we are still far from AGI, that we have to be aware of problems that AGI will bring, and they could manifest in very small and subtle ways, which we can't really pin down on AGI, but it could just be that, a bad reinforcement learning reward was set, like the classic problem of the coding agent changing the unit test rather than the code just to pass, because the reward was pass the unit test. So I don't believe we are that close to AGI. What I do believe, though, is that we are in a world of increasingly capable models that have increasingly larger amounts of data and tools available to them. So you actually don't need these super large models. All you need is a very clever small model that's easy and cheap to inference, and they will be everywhere. And if they don't know something, they can just go and check and get some information and bring it back. And that prevalence, I think, is the other part where the assumption that small models aren't as harmful, I think, is also wrong. I think combinations of small models being used by adversarial actors, we are simply not paying enough attention. And that is the part that I would pay a lot of attention to.
What does the future for Roost look like?
So I came to Roost after working in the corporate world for 30 years. And it has been truly eye-opening to see how the open community operates and the benefits it can bring to the world. If I were to be able to write the future of Roost, it will be as follows. It is open source safety tools written by safety-minded people. The economics of open source is you are paying yourself by working on it, because then you can bring it back. You will not have some random person writing this because there is no way to bring it back. So in a way, there is no money being exchanged or very little money being exchanged, but you're doing this because you're able to benefit from it and your compatriots are benefiting from it. Or you go to a new company tomorrow and that will benefit from it. And I think my 5-year view for this is we will build a rich set of tools that will provide an end-to-end safety infrastructure. And it will be better than anything else because it brings together the most forward-thinking safety engineers, product managers, policy people to make this really the best way to do safety.
What do you think is going to be the hardest challenge in achieving that goal in the next 5 years?
The key is if the safety teams are overwhelmed by all of the attacks I talked about, they will not have time to contribute to the community. That, I think, is really the problem. Every safety person that I've talked about wants to help others. The mission-driven attitude of safety teams across the board, the companies that I've worked at, the conferences I've gone to, is they want to do the right thing for the community. And that, I think, might be the biggest problem, is that if we have not gotten ready for it, they might just be underwater for too long.
Is there a non-consensus view that you hold today that you feel like you're going to be validated in the next 5 years?
I will go back to this, which is AI-assisted adversarial problems. We have not seen or modeled the threat modeled it to the extent it needs to. We are still thinking about it as a replacement for a human, and it won't be. The new problems will be completely new, will be coming at, if we are not ready for it, coming in ways that we will struggle to build defenses against it. And when it does come, it will hurt a lot of people who were simply not prepared for it.
Yeah. Well, Vinay, I am thoroughly security pilled and safety pilled on this. And, look, the reality of it is I am just happy that folks like you are spending their time and their life's work thinking about this because I don't think the everyday consumer goes through life thinking about what they're actually consuming. And the fact that there are the few in your circles that are on the front lines of this, I'm just really grateful to you for that. And I'm grateful to you for the time you spent here on Climb today. So thank you.
Thank you very much.